I know the school might have some bad memories for Yoshino, but listen, man, it's the most pleasant setting I could think to put myself in regards to this week's episode, because I sure as hell did not want to end up in a sewer. But with that said, hello everybody, welcome back to the channel, welcome back to another one of our weekly Jujutsu Kaisen discussion videos. Today we're going to be talking all about episode 10, Idol Transfiguration, but before we get into the video proper, quick reminder if you haven't done so yet, to hit that subscribe button, ring that bell, set notifications to all, let all of AniTube know that you're here. And with that said, everybody, we're going to go ahead and dig into this week's episode proper, and honestly, I think that this episode should have really been called Parallels, because the amount of parallels between these four characters who are at play for most of the episode. There are other characters involved for sure, like Kyotaka is in it a lot. Gojo gets a mention because of course he has to, he's our fave. But like certain other characters are in it, but the main four are Yoshino, Itadori, Nanami, and Mahito. And those four, right? In particular, Yoshino and Itadori and Nanami and Mahito have a lot of sort of like, in particular, Yoshino and Itadori seem to be parallels in the sense that I shouldn't say that they're the same as much as they're sort of like, it's just interesting how they run parallel to each other. Yoshino in particular acts, or at least claims that he is indifferent towards others. And rightfully so. A lot of the stuff that happens to Yoshino is, like, flat-out cruel, and the fact that his teacher even tries to say, like, weren't you their friend? Shouldn't you go to their funeral? Like, as if he didn't notice, like, as if the dude's just blind. And it's infuriating, you know? Like, so Yoshino has this sort of mentality that he is indifferent towards people because he feels like that's doing them a kindness, because the actual opposite of love would be hate. As opposed to the opposite of love is not hate, it's indifference, which Yoshino seems to stand against. He feels like that philosophy is false, and that feigning a sort of indifference towards things is actually more of a blessing than anything else. And it's just funny how this stands in contrast to Itadori, who has time and time and again been shown to truly go out of his way to help people because he cares about people. He does want the best for people. And I think it's just interesting to me how these two sort of parallel each other, where Yoshino, or Junpei, however you want to say it. I just call him Yoshino because it seems like everybody in the show goes by their last name. I don't know if that's just something I noticed, or if you guys noticed that too. I'm going to call him Yoshino, because for short, I can call him Yosh, which is hilarious. Or Yoshi. Oh, that's amazing. But yeah, Yoshi, our boy Yoshi, tends to believe that being indifferent towards people is better than caring or hating for them, whereas Itadori would obviously say that the better option is to care for everybody. And you see that immediately when the two first meet. Like, Itadori just stands out as such a good influence, or rather someone who could be a good influence on Yoshino. Not only in the sense that, like, he comes at just the right time because, oh my god, Yoshino was about to turn his teacher into some pile of goop. He was about to channel his inner Mahito and just like destroy that man. I was like waiting for it. It was going to be spooky. But obviously, Itadori shows up just in time. And it's funny just how the instant he arrives, that Itadori tends to sort of put this, or like he just, like when he arrives, he just makes the other characters feel good. And honestly, I feel like that likely translates to a lot of the audience as well. I can't attest to this for like everybody, but I know for me, whenever Itadori's on screen, I'm a happy dude, right? There's just something about Itadori that just puts me in a good mood. And I think that that's the same in universe as well. When Itadori shows up, there is just something about him that the other characters enjoy. It puts them at ease, you know? And with Yoshino, he probably needs somebody like that in his life. He needs somebody who can sort of put his mind at ease, be there for him in a way that nobody else really was, you know? Like, for the most part, Yoshino didn't really have a solid core group of friends. He always had sort of just himself. We do see a group of friends in this week's episode, but even then, like, they kind of just are out there looking out for themselves. Like, they willingly just let Yoshino get his ass kicked, and they don't run to grab a teacher. At least it didn't seem like it. And they don't bother to stand up for him, which I sure as hell would have done. It bothers me. It bothers me to see the way that Yoshino is treated by everybody here. And the sad thing is, you know, it probably happens quite a bit. it's upsetting. And I'm ashamed to admit that to an extent, I do kind of tend to agree with some of the things that Yoshino says. I personally am indifferent towards a lot of people, and that's wrong, and I know that it's wrong, but I do sort of understand where he's coming from in the sense that, like, yeah, there are some times where, like, I'll hear something bad happening to somebody and I'm like, oh, that's tragic. But deep down I'm like, well, it didn't happen to somebody I know, so I guess, like, I feel slightly better than if it did happen to somebody I knew. And I know that that's a bad thing, you know, like, but it is worth noting. I think Yoshino, and myself, for that matter, might maybe be slightly on the sociopath, somewhere on the sociopath trend, if you know what I'm saying. But yeah, like, I feel like I understand the sentiment that you act indifferent towards people you don't know, because in fairness, how many times have you heard, like, oh, did you hear what happened to so and so? And you're like, yeah, I don't care, like, because you don't, right? Like, because you don't know them. But at the same time, that doesn't mean that you have to be indifferent towards people when they're in front of you. Like, if something happened to somebody in front of me, like, if somebody were to, like, push somebody in front of me, then yeah, you're friggin' right, I'd jump in, because that's just what you do, you know? Like, you look out for each other. So I do think Yoshino, as I said, I do understand. I shouldn't say that I agree. That might be too much. It's more that I understand where Yoshino's coming from, in the sense that, like, the indifference he feels and the way that he feels that's a blessing. But if something were to happen in front of you, a good person probably wouldn't be able to help themselves. And that's exactly what Itadori does here. This week, when we see Itadori, like, actually finally meet Yoshino, the dude, like, friggin' jumps on top of a curse in front of him, and, like, Itadori clocks right away, like, oh, he can see this thing. Okay. And then he sort of tumbles with it, and then he immediately recognizes, like, oh, this guy doesn't like this other guy, and this other guy does seem to be kind of a jerk, so I'm gonna pants him and then run away with his pants, and I'm a lot faster than him, so by the time he gets down the street, I'll be back to Yoshino, and we can actually have this talk. And Itadori just tells him, like, well, you didn't like the guy, right? And it's just funny how Itadori can take one look at this dude and sort of know everything about him. And even if he didn't, then, like, it doesn't change anything, because Itadori still just wants to, like, innately help people. He is a good dude at heart. And I do think that somewhere in there, Yoshino's the same way. At least I'm hoping so, because again, the way this show is going, I feel like they could pull the rug out from under me, and one of these characters is gonna bite it. I'm particularly concerned about Nanami, but we will get there. But yeah, just something about Yoshino and Itadori's dynamic. It was really, really strong, and I just sort of, like, Yoshino just kind of breaks my heart. Like, there's just something about him that just, yeah, it just breaks my heart. I just feel for this character so much. But that's not all that we have to talk about this week. Oh, no. There is a lot more going on under the hood of this week's episode, and by that I mean there's a lot more than just the Yoshino Itadori stuff, although I likely made either Itadori or Yoshino the thumbnail because obviously I had the most to say about them. But there is a lot of interesting parallels with Nanami and Mahito as well. Now, Mahito says that they can see souls, right? That they can sort of, like, that they can not only see souls, but that they can, like, manipulate them. And we see how that works, and oh my god, that's terrifying. But we do see that Mahito has, like, power over souls, right? He's actually using the soul to manipulate the body. But the thing is, and this is where things get real creepy, is that Mahito sees souls in the same way that we see, like, say, like, anything, right? Like your desk, a piece of trash, a coffee cup that's like a chipped coffee cup that's broken or something. That's how Mahito likely sees the soul, right? Because he sees them all the time. It doesn't have that same luster that we might have. He even says, like, human beings always have this reverence for things that they can't see or things that they can't explain. And Mahito sees the soul all the time, so for him, he can see it, he can explain it, and so for him, there really is no fascination or mysticism with the soul. And he actively says, like, there's nothing special about a soul, there's nothing special about you or I to Yoshino. Like, he tells him, like, we're not important, life itself isn't important, which is like, whoa, that's heavy to drop on a teenager. But on top of that, he is trying to get into Yoshino's head. And you guys know me, I'm a Lord of the Rings guy, so if I may pull a reference, Mahito is really playing Worm Tongue to Yoshino's Theoden, in the sense that he really is sort of like trying to get into Yoshino's head and spin these tall tales to get him on his side, because he likely sees something in Yoshino, you know, which is very frightening, and does have me very concerned about what's going to happen to Yoshino. But Mahito is clearly, like, insane, but is well aware of how to work people like Yoshino and get him to join his side. One of the things he even says is, just as you eat and get hungry, you can kill someone if you hate them. Like, and that just goes to show Mahito's, like, sort of chaotic, evil stance on things. And this, of course, stands in opposition to Nanami, and so that's why they make a good fight, right? Because they just stand in such stark contrast with each other. Mahito is chaos incarnate, whereas Nanami is likely order incarnate, you know what I mean? Like, this dude is literally ready to clock out the instant he can, even if he's in the middle of a fight. And Nanami just crushes it. Not even Nanami. Like, Nanami on screen is already great. You already know, like, you give me an excellent Seiyu, I'm gonna, like somebody like Suda, I'm gonna have a good time with the character, especially when they're as, like, flamboyant and fun as Nanami. Well, I shouldn't say flamboyant, but when they're as extra, when they're as extra and as fun as Nanami is, especially when paired with someone as chaotic and scary as Mahito, you know you're in for a good time. But oh my god, does Mappa ever go in this week? Like, the fight scene is just insanely good. Like, I'm talking, like, this is top tier, next level Mappa stuff. Like, the fight is super good, and I wish I could like sing the praises of every single animator who worked on that scene, but obviously I can't. Unfortunately, at the time of recording, Sakaguboru hasn't listed the names of the animators who worked on this particular scene, and I friggin' love Sakaguboru because I like to give these animators praise because they absolutely are like the animators are the reason we watch anime in the first place. So anytime that I can get a chance to praise them, I do. Unfortunately, I am not skilled enough, and I really wish I was, but I'm not skilled enough to just recognize, like, exactly who, like, what animator worked on what. I am not that skilled. So I can't praise the individual artists and animators who worked on what, like, individual sections of this fight. But needless to say, to the Mappa crew, you guys friggin' nailed this fight. It is amazing. It is so good. And at the same time, like, fights like this in Kaisen sort of put me at ease when it comes to stuff like Titan, which is, oh my god, in a few days. Actually, by the time you see this, I'm pretty sure, yeah, by the time you see this, it will be tomorrow. Titan comes back tomorrow. That, oh my god. But anyway, like, just to say that the good, talented ass people over at Mappa really do bring the thunder when they need to. I am concerned that maybe they're being crunched, which nobody likes, but at the same time, it looks phenomenal, and I have to give them praise. I wish that crunch culture wasn't a thing, and I do fear that Mappa might be falling into crunch culture, but regardless, it is friggin' dope, and the animators deserve all the praise. It absolutely looks fantastic. But also just, like, the dynamic of the fight between Mahito and Nanami is just insanely good, and, like, the way, like, Nanami starts on the upper hand, right? Like, he's kind of, like, pushing Mahito back a bit, but then Mahito just, like, goes ape shit and, like, just starts whooping some ass, like, just not even whooping ass, but just, like, being creepy and weird, and that putting Nanami on his heels until the end of the episode, where my boy says, "Now you got me working overtime." And nobody likes working overtime. But yeah, on that note, I am going to wrap up today's video here, so I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, don't forget to boop that up snoot, share if you care, leave a comment down below, and of course, as always, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring that bell, set notifications to all, let all of AniTube know that you're here, because we are trying to hit that 25k goal. If you've already subbed to the channel, maybe consider sharing the channel around with your friends. We're trying to hit that 25k goal before the end of the year, and I think we can do it, but it's going to be close. And before we go, as always, I want to give a big thank you to the good folks in the T Squadron. Look at these beautiful people. Look at all these beautiful names, and hey, if you'd like to join these beautiful people, there are now 2 ways to do so. The first is by hitting that Patreon link in the description, and the second one is by hitting that join button right beside the sub button to get a badge next to your name, some emotes to spam in the comments, and of course your name scrolling past the screen here. So if that sounds cool to you, go ahead and hit that join button, or check out the Patreon link. Either way, it is super, super appreciated. So once again, a big thank you to the good folks in the T Squadron, but with that said, that is it from me. So until next time, you stay classy, AnyTube, and you wash your dang hands.